Good evening and welcome to the Victoria City Council meeting of July 19th, 2022. At this time, Ms. Hilbrick, would you please call roll?
Councilman De La Garza?
I am present.
Councilman Crocker?
Here.
Councilwoman Scott?
Here.
Councilman Lofgren?
Here.
And Mayor Pro Tem Young?
Here, please note that Mayor Bachnight and Councilwoman Solis are absent.
Yes, sir.
At this time, would you please rise and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, the Texas Pledge, and remain standing for a brief moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In honor of the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. Once again, welcome to all those that are present in chambers tonight, watching via TV and online. Mr. Farrell, good evening.
Evening. Thank you.
Do you have any announcements or reminders?
Not tonight, sir.
How about any public or employee recognitions?
Not tonight.
All right. Moving on, are there any items from council? Well, we're going to make this quick tonight.
Let me just throw in a real quick. There was an article in the paper about the appraisal district postponing the property tax audit decision. And I think council already knows this, that the information in the article in the paper about what the audit's all about was not really accurate. It's not really questioning the values of the that the appraisal district does. Those are certainly audited, but this is more a best practices audit that I think council talked about several months ago. And so it's still on the agenda for discussion at the appraisal district. I'm reporting this because I serve as a representative and just wanted to let everybody know it's still under discussion.
Thank you for that clarification. All right, at this time, we'll move on to citizens' communication. I've got the sheets in front of me. As I call your name, please come up to the podium, state your name, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Blanche De Leon.
Council, Mayor Pro Tem Young, my name is Blanche De Leon. I live in Victoria on the original site of the land grant from Margaret Wright back in 1835. I'm here tonight to thank the council and the city for your consideration and your support of the De Leon Monument. I'm sure maybe some of you might have been around, but maybe about 55 to 60 years ago, this was a dream of my father's. And I'm happy to say that with your support, this dream of his will come through. And I speak on behalf of the family. We are honored, grateful, and humbled for your consideration. And I think my first call from the council members came from Dr. Young. And since Jesus and Mayor Bachnight are absent, I'm going to have to just designate you an honorary De Leon tonight. And with that, I have this. It's our brand. And if you can find some space on that lapel of yours. And I am sure there are many more honorary De Leons to come in the next couple of years. Thank you. Dr. Young was the one who called me about a year ago to reintroduce this idea. And I remember I was very curt with him and said, because I was at work, Dr. Young, this better be important. So it is, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Long time coming to have this done, and cannot wait to see it come to fruition. We wouldn't be here celebrating without your family and their legacy, so thank you. Moving on, Jim Hester.
Good afternoon, Dr. DeLeon and council. My name is Jim Hester. I want to start by thanking you for your attention to the issues about the books in the Victoria Public Library, as well as the videotaping of the city council meetings. I look back at those to see what people said. And so anyway, 6 weeks ago, I spoke about how books had about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, especially life science books, impacted my life, leading to college scholarships, a good career, and a reactor patent that reduces N2O, which is considered one of the worst greenhouse gases. At the same time, and since then, other speakers have alerted us to how young, impressionable minds exposed to the wrong material can be hurt. This is especially true of sexually explicit content, which can result in depression, confusion, disrupted brain development, poor decision-making, etc. This led me to see if I could find information supporting the alerts. I found that risks do range from lifestyle changes, including lifelong use of drugs, surgical alterations costing 6 figures, and in many cases, suicides. Here is one report. The sex reassignment doesn't work. Here's evidence dated 3/9/2018 by Dr. Ryan T. Anderson, PhD. Dr. Paul McHugh, the University Distinguished Service Professor in Psychology in Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, explains, transgendered men do not become women, nor do transgendered women become men. All, including Bruce Jenner, become feminized men or masculized women, counterfeits or impersonators of the sex which they identify. In that lies their problem. The most thorough follow-up of sex reassigned people, extending over 30 years, was conducted in Sweden, where the culture is strongly supportive of transgender and documents their lifelong mental unrest. 10 to 15 years after surgical reassignment, the suicide rate of those who had undergone sex reassignment surgery rose to 20 times that of comparable peers. As I mentioned 6 weeks ago, why not have books that enable increasing the area academic statistics up to the top 10% of children in Texas? As mentioned in Michael Quinn Sullivan, publisher of Texas Scorecard, Failing the Next Generation, 6/3/22, that's the date, raising our children is also a job, the heart of the child in the ways of liberty and governance, and to serve their neighbors. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Hester. Gay Patek.
Greetings, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. I would like to address again the importance of protecting the innocence of children with age and content-appropriate books purchased with our taxpayer dollars or even donated to the library. We must face the reality that sexually explicit content that gives depiction or description of illicit sex or sexual immorality, among other things, is not only harmful to children, but is never helpful to our children. We have many books available to our children ages 17 and under at the Victoria Public Library that do this. We have laws that apply to teens on when they can get a driver's license, when they can start working, the age that they can drink, the age that they can purchase cigarettes, marry, and we even have a city curfew. These laws are there to protect the children from harmful, sometimes permanent consequences of doing things too early. It is okay for us to put boundaries on what we bring into the children's section of our library. We have an internet protection policy called CIPA that protects our children from harm. Just as we have CIPA in place to protect our children, we need a children's collection policy that protects the children of this community as well. I would like to thank all of you for the time that everyone is giving and putting into protecting the innocence of children with age and content appropriate books and holdings purchased for the Victoria Public Library with our taxpayer dollars or even donated to the library. I was going to say thank you, Mr. Garza, but I'll say thank you, Mr. Farrell, for all the work that y'all do and all the time that you're putting in on this. Thank you, Ms. Lacey, for the work that you're doing and for the work that your team's doing, and also to Ms. Williams-Capone and for all those that are working with her. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I also want to thank the mayor and all council members for your hard work in coming up with the right solution for protecting the innocence of our children with our taxpayer dollars and for the future of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Botek. Bernie Seal.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council members. My name is Bernie Seal. My husband and I are the directors of the St. Gianna Pro-Life Ministry at Holy Family Catholic Church. I have 3 sons and 6 grandchildren. I have a stake in the future of our children. I grew up with innocent childhood books with stories that had a moral to learn. Books like the Mother Goose nursery rhymes and precious little books like Peter Rabbit, The Little Engine That Could, among just a few to enjoy and expand my imagination. We have books in our library for children that discuss transgenderism. The concept in these books are harmful to children and can lead them down a path of destruction for the rest of their lives, or at least devastate their near future. Our children deserve better than this. I urge the City Council to protect the innocence of our children with age and content-appropriate books in our Victoria Public Library, which are purchased with our tax dollars. I believe that the majority of Victorians do not want our children and grandchildren to be exposed to material that is harmful and confusing to them. Even as preteens, they are trying to form their mind and hearts about who they are becoming. They don't need to be infused with unnecessary choices about transgender, which is contrary to human nature. I believe these topics belong in the family, where true love can guide them, and instead of those with an agenda to encourage our children to become something they are not created to be. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you today, and I appreciate your consideration in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Seal. Michael Vonderow.
Good evening, Dr. Young and City Council.
Good evening.
Came here to talk about the appraisal district. I was just wondering if they could have the Texas Rangers audit them, with Chuck Norris and stuff, I think because he solves all the crimes and all the issues, and, I think that's the answer, because no one knows what's going on. I just know my trailer house was appraised 3 times more than what it should be, and I had to raise a bunch of commotion, just to get it lowered. After listening to me a few minutes, most people are ready to, lower it, and anyway, imagine if you had a house worth $3 million and they appraised it at $9 million, because they appraised it 3 times as 300% more, and that's why people are living in tents, because they can't afford their property taxes. I'm exaggerating, but they're over appraising it, and they don't discriminate against one person. It's everyone: the rich, the poor, the middle class, whites, Hispanics, blacks. I mean, almost everyone's heard a case of their home being overappraised and stuff. And I wish they could have an audit, either by the Attorney General or the Texas Rangers or something. Or I can put up $20 and have a GoFundMe, and we could get, a couple $100,000. If there's 50,000 people in Victoria, just $1 a piece, that's 50,000 to audit it. But something needs to be done, because the chief appraisal officer, he's saying, well, it's not up to me. Well, who's given the order to raise the taxes? And is it just Victoria or Texas? And usually when people get in a bind and they don't know what to say, they always say, well, Putin did it, And I don't think Putin's raising these gas taxes or making the appraisals. He's more worried about winning the war in Ukraine. Thanks, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Von der Rohe. I have a Bernadine Perez. Good evening.
Good evening, council members. Man, these people got bigger problems than we do. But anyways, I wanted to bring some attention about the game rooms, why they close them, why they open them, why they close them, why they open them. I like to support small businesses. I go to bingo. I support bingo. I just want to know why we're not able to support game rooms. A lot of people say it's wrong, but it's not wrong. You got a community here where people want to go play. They want to meet friends. They want to de-stress. And a lot of times, I can't, because they open and they close them. I just want to know if there's a way that they can keep these things open, because from what I've seen, it's a lot of elderly people that want to go, they want to sit down, they want to enjoy themselves, they want to talk, and they want to mingle. And I just feel that by shutting them down, it's not right. I mean, y'all are taking things away from the community. It's like y'all are telling people, no, you can't do this and you can't do that. So I just want to know if there's any way that you people could just talk about it and let them open up. I mean, bingo, Will Martin does it at the Palace Bingo, so, and I know he's behind it. So I'm talking for the small businesses, and I want to know if there's any way you guys can support them on letting them stay open, letting them give away their prizes or whatever it is they need to do. I mean, we need to support our community. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. Kim Pickens.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
I would like to speak on a place that exudes the values that we lift up in this community. A place where you can come as you are, regardless of race, gender, religious affiliation, how much money you have or don't have, whether you're homeless or you live in a mansion. A place where if you're seeking information, you can always find an answer so you can formulate your own conclusions. A place where the ideas of Matthew 25's welcome the stranger is always in practice. That place is our public library. They offer resources that lower barriers for those seeking jobs, community, and connection. There is no greater gift to our community than that of a public library that consistently considers the voices of the most vulnerable members of our community. Those voices that people try to stifle because they don't fit on their own notion of what, or they make people uncomfortable. We have to stop pretending that the voices of our vulnerable and historically underrepresented communities are not our neighbors, that they're not our family members, that they're not our friends who deserve to be at the table. Remember, we are not here to judge, but to love. 1 Peter 1, chapter 1, verse 17 says, "You say that God is your father, but God doesn't have favorites. He judges all people by what they do. So we must honor God while we live as a stranger here on earth." Please support the library and what they do. I was a board member for 8 years, and We always did good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pickens. Nadia Pittendry, I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Hi. So I also think that we all have much bigger problems to address than the issue of the books in the library, but I heard that this was going to be addressed today, and I just wanted to show up and let you all know that there are people in the community. We may not be as organized or outspoken as the people that are trying to get certain books removed from general distribution in the library, but I am here just to let you know there are people in the community who support free and I feel like I'm speaking on behalf of a free and open society. That's what America was founded on, and we don't have to all look like each other. We don't all have to have the same beliefs. But we do have to make room for one another. And I was at the library board meeting where well-intentioned members of our community spoke about certain books that mention the existence of transgender people as though they were hardcore pornography. And my understanding is that that's just not accurate, that the two sides are talking past one another. And so I'm here to speak to my neighbors and fellow community members. We all need to lower the emotion in the room and think about what's best for the community and uphold, just support the library and the values of learning and an open society and people having access to legitimate sources of knowledge. It's not for us to decide. And if this was material that was legitimately dangerous and hardcore pornography, I think we'd have a conversation. But from my understanding, that is not what's happening. So I'm here to speak on behalf of freedom and tolerance. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no more, we'll close citizen communication. And before I move on to items with public hearings, I did want to say greetings and welcome to County Commissioner Burns, who joined us. All right, we'll move on to items with a public hearing.
Item C1 is an ordinance amending and readopting Chapter 4 and Section 24-22 of the City Code of Ordinances to reflect the separation of the Victoria County Public Health Department and Animal Control Services.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. The changes we're asking you to make to the Animal Control Ordinance are exceptionally minor this evening. As you know, it recently went through a bit of a renovation. We aren't changing any of that language. Recently, the county did separate the Public Health Department from the Animal Control Department, created two different departments. We simply need to change the language that refers to the public health official and change that to the animal control officer. And so there's just a few minor language changes in there, as well as separating out the fees that are required to go to the Public Health Authority and the fees that are required to go to animal control. If you have no questions on that.
Has the county finalized the separation?
It's my understanding that the commissioners have voted to separate them out and that they are now two separate departments. I've spoken with David Gonzalez, the county health official, who is the one who contacted me, letting me know that they had separated out. We needed to make this change.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, at this time, I'll open up C1 for public comments. Seeing none, I'll close public comments and entertain a motion.
I'll move for approval of item C1.
Second that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Item C1 passes. We'll head to the consent agenda. Lucky you.
Item D1 is the adoption of minutes of the regular meeting held on July 5th, 2022. Item D2 is a resolution requesting approval to apply for a grant seeking $296,468.30 from the MG and Lily A. Johnson Foundation to make improvements and purchase equipment for the fire department training facility located at 1411 Southwest Bend, Jordan. Item D3 is a resolution awarding the annual supply contract for liquid ferrous chloride to Penco Incorporated of San Felipe, Texas, in the amount of approximately $91,608. Item D4 is a resolution awarding the annual supply contract for liquid phosphate-based corrosion inhibitors to Caris LLC of Peru, Illinois, in the amount of approximately $136,500. Item D5 is a resolution awarding the annual supply contract for liquid sodium chloride to International Dioxide Incorporated of North Kingston, Rhode Island, in the amount of approximately $152,880. Item D6 is a resolution awarding the annual supply contract for wastewater sludge dewatering polymer to Univar Solutions USA Incorporated of Dover, Florida, in the amount of approximately $85,185.75. Item D7 is a resolution awarding the annual supply contract for liquid ammonium sulfate to Chemtrade Chemicals USA LLC of Parsippany, New Jersey, in the amount of approximately $95,858. Item D8 is a resolution awarding the annual supply contract for liquid sodium hypochlorite to Univar Solutions USA Incorporated of Dover, Florida, in the amount of approximately $114,387. Item D9 is a resolution awarding the annual supply contract for liquid sulfur dioxide to DPC Industries Incorporated of Corpus Christi, Texas, in the amount of approximately $106,305.
I move we approve the exquisitely presented consent agenda item.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Consent agenda passes. Moving on to action items.
Item E1 is an ordinance amending Chapter 15 of the Victoria City Code pertaining to the purchase of catalytic converters. This item is on third reading.
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Council. Mayor Pro Tem Young. I'm here with the final reading of the city's catalytic converter ordinance. We've made one change since the last time we were here. And if you look at the second page, the number 2 there at the bottom of the page, you'll see an underline. It says upon request and established by Occupations Code Chapter 1956. And the reason we added that is because we had in there that they're to send us pictures and all information. I simply don't have the place to store all that. So upon request is best for us.
Very good. At this point, we have a motion or any discussion?
I'll move for approval of item E1.
Second.
Mr. Lofgren, I would like to, first of all, I mean, we haven't voted yet, but thank you for bringing this important issue up, and to the chief and staff for taking this under your wing and making the public more safe and secure. Okay.
City attorney wrote it. So
Absolutely. Thank
thanks
you,
to her.
Ms. Lacy.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. I'm still trying to find the change that the chief referenced.
Okay.
So it's on what was passed out. Okay. I wanted to make sure the motion approved the right version, but I understand now.
All right, well, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. E1 passes.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Item E2 is a resolution approving the amendments to the bylaws for the City of Victoria Tourism Advisory Board and extending the appointments of members to reflect the bylaw amendments.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me here. I have a short presentation for you to discuss our Tourism Advisory Board and some bylaw amendments that we have presented to the board that they would like to see follow through. So the Tourism Advisory Board was formed a little over a year and a half ago to advise the Convention and Visitors Bureau, to hear regular reports from us, and for us to have an outlet to update a group of engaged stakeholders about what we're working on in the Convention and Visitors Bureau. So just a couple of changes that we will be making to our bylaws. The first one, and I would say probably the most important, is the stipulation to stagger the terms of the board. The board has 13 positions, and they all represent some certain sector of the economy that impacts tourism. And when we established the board, we had all the terms ending in 2 years. So all the terms would have been ending December 31st of this year. This amendment would be to extend the terms of a certain number of the positions. All the terms essentially in the end would still be able to serve 6 years total, all the persons on the board. But what this would do is make the lodging, the arts, and the historic preservation terms 3-year terms, where they could serve 2 terms max, and all the other board positions would be 2-year terms. The first 3 terms that I mentioned that would be extended, lodging, I think we can say is definitely some of the most important positions on our board. They represent our hotels who pay the hotel occupancy taxes. The arts group, there's 2 positions for that, very important to Victoria's tourism economy as well as historic preservation. So these are 2 pillars of our tourism industry that would be extended to 3-year terms. And then the resolution is attached would extend those individuals who are in those current positions to where their first term would expire of December 31st of 2023, not this year. Also, a stipulation to extend the terms for board officers. We do have board officers. As it stands, their term would have been up this year. This would allow them to serve for two years and serve for 2 consecutive terms. Also, a removal of some conflicting language regarding quorum. This was at the advice of our city attorney. As well as clarifying some language in the subcommittee section. Right now, there is no language in there that verifies how subcommittee members will be appointed, which is deferred then to Robert's rules, but they're appointed by our board chair right now, and so this is just some clarifying language for that. So board terms, all terms are currently 2-year terms, as I mentioned, that would expire at the end of this year. The bylaw amendments and resolution would extend some of those positions until next year. It would extend a total of 6 positions, or about half the board. I mentioned our board officers. Those are currently Sue Prudhomme, who represents the Victoria College and Museum of the Coastal Bend. She is our board chair. Brenda Talley of the Victoria Ballet Theater, who is an arts position, our vice chair. And Ashley McGee, owner-operator of our Flow Paddle Co., who is our secretary. These amendments were approved by our board by unanimous vote at a June 22nd meeting. We currently have 3 vacant positions on our board. If these amendments are approved by council, we would look to fill the arts position right away. And then since the food and beverage and downtown businesses would be expiring at the end of this year, we would look to wait till January 1st to open those up. And our current board members, we do have 10 board members right now. James Weirden, of the owner of the Inn on Main, Brenda Guajardo, Director of Sales at the Courtyard Marriott, Raj Panchal, the owner-manager of Comfort Inn and Suites, Brenda Talley, Executive Director of Victoria Ballet Theater, Sue Prudhomme, Executive Director of Cultural Affairs for Victoria College, Jay Lambert of UHV, Jeff Wright, our Executive Director of Victoria Preservation, Rosanna Frisch, Property Manager of Victoria Mall, Elizabeth Tice, the Director of the Children's Discovery Museum, and Ashley McGee, our owner-operator of Flow Paddle Co. And at this time, I can answer any questions about these bylaw amendments. Yes, Ms. Scott.
I'm very confused on how this is supposed to fix the problem, because you've got 2 3-year terms, which is 6 years, and you've got 3 2-year terms, which is 6 years.
So at the end of the 6 years, yes, so those positions would become open and we would be looking to fill the whole board, but we're not having to do it every 2 years.
Okay, but at the end of 6 years, you're going to lose your whole board.
Yes, we would have to refill those positions at the time, yes, ma'am.
I thought when we first put this board together, we were going to stagger it so that some would only serve a 1-year term, some would serve a 2-year term, so that every year or period like that, you would have some of the board be replaced, but not all of the board be replaced. So
when we started the board, it was all 2-year terms. We hadn't discussed a 1-year term, 2-year term, or anything like that. So this was a solution, since the board is already established, we thought would be a way to extend the current folks on the board. Yes, you're right. At the end of 6 years, we would have to look to replace the board, but we're not having to do it every 2 years. So this was a solution we thought could fit with the current folks that we have on the board now.
I guess if we're fixing it, can't we fix some of those terms at the same time? I mean, I know this is all that they've approved, but you just kind of confirmed for me that what I thought. You're not really fixing your problem. You're just, as Councilman Halapaska would say, you're just kicking the can down the road.
Okay. It's a fair point, and if council would like us to revisit this, we could.
And maybe you've got some time on it, maybe we can approve this, but I think that this needs some more work. That's my opinion.
Well, you make a very, very valid point. In regard to 6 years, we're going to revisit this and start anew. We certainly have some time being, we weren't looking to fill 2 spots until January 23 anyway. I think it's important to get it as right as possible.
In terms of your current service, do you typically, how many terms do you typically see serving at this point? I mean, it's just for 1 2-year term and then they could be reappointed? Is that the current system?
Right, so we haven't gone under any reappointments yet. All we've experienced so far is people resigning and things like that and filling those positions. So that'd be a conversation to have with our city manager to see how he prefers to have us reappoint those positions, whether it's an open application or it's a simple reappointment by council.
Okay, and I didn't see in the current bylaws, I missed them, is there a cap on number of terms currently?
Yes. So
Okay,
the positions we were going to be extending tonight or requesting to extend would be 2 3-year terms, and then the other positions would be a max of 3 2-year terms.
Okay, but I'm talking about in your existing bylaws. I know that was. the
Existing
amendment.
bylaws, so yes, so it does limit it to 4 years total, so two 2-year terms.
And do members of the board typically serve those 4 years, or do you mostly see them serving 2 years and rotate?
Well, right now, what we've been seeing is we've had a few folks resign, and most of those resignations were because they took positions outside of their industry sector. For instance, a food and beverage member left the food and beverage industry. We give them some time, 90 days, to find employment in that same sector. For instance, this individual decided to not do that, so they resigned. The only other person we've had is a person who quit their job and left Victoria, and we had one position who didn't show up to any meetings or anything like that. So that was one of our first appointments.
It is worth noting, this board was only created last year, so we haven't had the 4-year cycle.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it, because I wouldn't see that in the bylaws that I didn't see it anywhere else, so that makes sense. Thanks.
Well, and this does say you're extending some of the positions until December of '23.
Yes, ma'am.
Which is an odd year. We're looking mostly at even. So does that take care of the problem, or do you end up with half of your board with a term that expires in '23 and half of it with a term that expires in '22?
Yes, so we'd have a number of those positions, 7 of those positions expiring at the end of this year.
Okay.
And then 6 of them that would be extended into 2023.
So that there still might be a problem, but what I described earlier may not actually.
Not
Big
for
problem.
6 years, yes. If they all want to maintain their positions and everything like that, those positions will all expire at the end of, the board bylaws as they're written, if somebody comes in and fills a spot, for instance, that's not a new person, a new position. They're only filling that term till it expires. So yes, we would need to reappoint the whole board at the end of 6 years. We just thought this would be a solution, that it wouldn't be like every 2 years the whole board is up. Because that would have been the case. That would have been at December 31st of this year, the whole board would have had to go for reappointment.
But with your change and extending some to '23, you won't have that situation.
Yes, we would still have the 6 members on the board.
6, but not
Yes.
13.
Do you have some that expire in odd years and some that expire in even years? So in other words, like half your board's going to expire in 1 year, and another half would expire the
I'd have to
following
take a look
year.
at that, Derek.
That way
Yeah.
you're not replacing all 6 at the same time.
Sure.
I think
Or all
that's.
13.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's the question, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so actually my question earlier was based on the problem that you have right now, and you are trying to fix it.
We can, yes, definitely take a look at fixing that. We just want to get the council's feedback if that's a concern of having to reappoint the entire board at the end of 6 years. We could take a look at that, or if that's something they want, the council would like to accept these bylaw amendments for now, and we can work on that problem in the coming years, if you will.
So if you'd like, council, we'll take this back, do some work on it. You can take no action tonight, and we'll come back to you with some new descriptions.
Pretty comfortable. Yeah, I agree. Are you fine with that, tabling it? Table it.
Sure.
Table it, take it back, look at the odd even, figure out the mathematical formula going forward.
Sure. Yes, sir.
Carry the one, whatever from
Yes, sir.
that it works out equitable across there. I did have a question. Do you have any particular like lodging or that you would have difficulty filling, like a lack of applicant pool?
I would say no, not at this point. We've had a healthy number. The lodging is a great mix of individuals. We have the owner of a small boutique B&B. We have Rod, Mr. Panchal, who is an owner-operator. We have Ms. Maharda, who is a director of sales. And we've seen solid applicants, especially in lodging. Now, some other sectors, we haven't had that many applications, but we've never had a instance where we've never had a qualified applicant. And
I ask that because we've set up here and had to fill some boards before that demanded mechanical trades and things like this, which became very difficult to fill. And so we had to kind of massage some of the things to make that right. I just want to make sure that we didn't have that issue here.
No, we've had applicants who sometimes don't fit the industry's description, and we have to tell them, you know, that it's really not your role, your position is not really fitting that type of industry. But we have not at this moment had a moment where we were getting applications, and every application, none of them worked. Okay. We've had at least one solid application in every instance when we've tried to fill a position.
Very good. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll table this and bring it
Yes, sir.
forth on a future meeting.
Yes.
Make a
Motion
motion that we table this for a future consideration.
I'll second.
Motion and second to table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. All right, we'll table it. Motion passed.
Item E3 is a resolution approving a contract with Hinojosa Art LLC for the De Leon statue project in an amount not to exceed $300,000.
All right, Council, thank you for your time this evening. I'm going to offer a brief presentation on the agency that we look to contract with for the De Leon statue project for our bicentennial 2024 celebration. Oh, excuse me. Just a brief project timeline. The conceptual stage from March of April of 2022. The project accepted bids. The bids were opened on May 16th and were advertised in accordance with the requirements of such. The bids closed on June 1st of 2022, and the bidding process winner was selected in June. We are presenting the contract to council tonight. And then there are some a tentative timeline. None of this is set in stone or bronze, if you will, but a production stage of about a year, site preparation for a couple of months afterwards, an installation of the project, and we look to have that happen in February 2024, so in enough time for a April 13th bicentennial celebration and dedication on that date. So a little bit about the project. There's been, we get questions. It is one statue with two persons. Featuring Martin De Leon, our founder, and his wife, Patricia De La Garza. I mentioned the dedication in April 2024. And we did receive one bid, Hinojosa Art of LLC of Laredo, Texas. The artist is Armando Hinojosa. The contract price is for $300,000, excuse me. And the payment is broke down as such. Mr. Hinojosa will require a $100,000 down payment for securing foundry space, as well as 3D imaging, which is a process that is going to be required to fulfill this project in the timeline that we need to. Another up to $100,000 in incremental payments as requested by invoice from the artist. These must be accompanied by detailed progress reports, which include photographs upon request from the city. Once those reports are received in accordance with their invoices, along with any photos, we find those satisfactory, then payment will be released. And that is up to $100,000 aggregate. And the final $100,000 payable to the artist upon completion of the project. So you might be wondering, who is Armando Hinojosa? A very talented artist of Laredo, Texas. I just talked a little bit about the scope of work. He will assist the city with installation of the bronze statues, which will be ready by February 2024. There will be some steps that we still need to secure. The city will need to procure the production and installation of a granite base. We've already started communications with our Public Works Department, our Main Street, our Economic Development Office. We're all working closely together to be involved in this part of the process, which will come further down the road. We need to get those statues done, that artistic process done, because Mr. Hinojosa will advise us on the right type of material and color and that kind of thing that will work with the statues. So some examples of Mr. Hinojosa's work. You can see he's got a very Western sort of Frederick Remington kind of style, very classic. And this is just a very short list of the projects he's worked on. His bid documentation included over 30 references. So incredibly talented artist. Some notables include the Tejano Monument at the Texas Capitol, the founding communities of San Antonio, sculptures at Bexar County Courthouse, a number of installations with Texas A&M Kingsville. So he's worked very much over South Texas. And we feel strongly that this style of work is very close to what we would like to see as a depiction of our founder and his wife. And the De Leon family has been consulted throughout the steps of this process as well. So it's an artist that we're very much looking forward to work with, and I can answer any questions you might have at this time.
Will there be a plaque also, or is that something separate that we'll be doing?
That would be a separate process to get that. Mr. Hinojosa is just making the statues, but we've had discussions with Ms. De Leon about fundraising efforts or how that might be funded. There should be, we believe, some kind of plaque there, but that won't be part of his artistic process.
All right, I'm excited about this.
I move we adopt.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those, same sign? All those opposed, same sign, pardon me. Motion passes. We'll move on to item E4.
Thank you.
Item E4 is a resolution awarding
Thank
the
you, Joel.
Victoria Public Library Windows Security Film Project to Sensational Solutions for their competitive sealed proposal in the amount of $59,803.45.
Mr. Welter, good evening.
Hey, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. It's good to see you all again. Real quick, don't have a presentation or anything, but just a little quick history lesson on this one is where it came from. I think it was a emergency grant that we had received post Hurricane Harvey for a storm shutter system to go into the library. Unfortunately, over the discovery period on that, it turned out to be outside of the scope and outside of the dollar amount that we were able to get for that grant. So we were looking for a way to recover this grant and still get some of the money and be able to protect the library in some way. Excuse me. So this is what we landed on. FEMA did approve the scope change for this security film to go on to the library. And I'm going to introduce my project manager, who you've heard me talk about several times. He's going to give you a little bit of a rundown on the scope and the product details. So welcome, Avery Flessner.
Thank you, Roger, for the introduction. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. My name is Avery Flessner, and like Roger mentioned, I am project manager for this project and other projects for building services. So just a few technical details on the window film. It's an 8 mil thick, probably a 3M product, though we have several approved alternates. It'll be applied to the interior surfaces of all exterior facing windows of the library. And it'll be accompanied by a silicone structural attachment system that will be applied basically around the corners of the glazing to attach it to the frame of all of those exterior facing windows. The idea really behind this film is to prevent any windblown debris or anything from entering the library and further destroying city assets. So it's really about property protection. So with that, happy to answer any technical questions on the materials provided or anything about working schedule, anything like that.
Anybody? Thank you, Mr. Flessner.
Yes,
Appreciate
sir. Thank you.
I'll move for approval of item E4.
A second.
Right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, E4, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All those opposed, same sign. Item E4 passes. We'll move on to item E5.
Item E5 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute all real estate sales contracts related to property acquisition for the CDBG-DR Flood Buyout Program for GL contract number 20-066-077-C041 in the amount not to exceed $1,350,000.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Thank you. Before I ask if you have questions or concerns about this, this resolution and what this is going to do for us, I wanted to say thank you, huge thank you to Tyler Smith at GrantWorks. We were awarded this funding end of 19, and we're just now getting to the point where we're getting contracts in from finally approved program participants. Part of the reason why, of course, this took so long, like with everything, was COVID. There was a lot of personal contact that was initially necessary, or in theory necessary, to qualify, get the documentations, review it, and that slowed to less than a crawl. But GrantWorks never stopped. They never stopped moving forward. There's been an incredible amount of work to do with qualifying the participants and getting them approved, because once everything was submitted to the GLO, in some cases they needed more documentation. A lot of it was difficult to get. So they've worked very, very hard on this to move us forward. And so what we're doing tonight, for two reasons, we want to authorize the city manager to sign all contracts related to this program to expedite the process, for one thing, but also because the Texas Public Information Act protects the information related to applicants for disaster recovery funds. So now I will ask if you have any questions or concerns about this.
I have a question just about the program itself. In terms of when a particular piece of property is being bought, is there a specific formula that's applied to calculate that purchase price? Is that a negotiated number?
Yes, that's part of the process, but the city has hired an appraiser.
Okay.
So each property is appraised independently.
Gotcha. And is there negotiation off of that appraised value, or is it, this is the number?
Well, because it's a city, we were not allowed to pay above fair market value. So
Okay.
that's where that determination comes from.
That's what I wanted to make
Right.
sure of. Okay, good. Thank you.
Is this the program, though, where we were authorized to pay fair market value before the damage occurred, as opposed to fair market value after the structure's been destroyed?
That is a detail I am not sure about, actually. Let me find out about that. That's a good question.
I was just curious and also wanted to say that.
Well, because you're right. In some cases, after the fact, there is no structure. So
Right.
I'm not really sure about that, but I'm sure there is an answer that I can get for you.
I know that's been a problem with the buyouts in the past.
Right.
And that's part of why I'm bringing it up, because if this program does offer value of the value before, I think offering it after has kept a lot of people from being interested, and that might be an important thing for them to know, for those that several withdrew, various reasons.
Right. We had 4. Yes, that's true. Okay. Yeah, I'll find out about that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Thank you, Ms. Connolly.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
I move we adopt.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion E5 passes. Moving on to E6.
Item E6 is a resolution awarding a contract to Lester Contracting Incorporated for the Riverside Duck Pond Project for their competitive seal proposal of $1,243,018 for Phase 1 and $371,014.75 for Phase 2, for a total of $1,614,032.75.
Good evening, Mr. Alfaro.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. I'm super excited to bring this forward to you this evening. I hope you take light of my PowerPoint, try to keep it fun and exciting, but nonetheless very informative. So we'll go ahead and jump right into it. This is the Riverside Duck Pond Project that I know the community and all of us have been waiting for. Just a really quick overview of the contents. We'll just go over the timeline leading up to the project, a quick review of the project design and the phases, and then the contractor and city scope of work. The timeline that we have kind of kicked off in 2020 in May with the City Council approving the architecture and engineering services with Brett with Luck Design. In October of 2020, City Council approved a grant submittal to the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. And then November, we actually submitted the grant to TPWD. In 2021, of May, we were notified of the grant awarding through TPWD. In June through August, we did have pre-agreement meetings with the state. We had site visits with the state. And due to those site visits, we did have some minor modifications of the design. In September of 21, the City Council approved a contract with TPWD to formally accept the grant. And then October through December, the city staff was working with TPWD to include some final items for review, gaining access to the online portal through TPWD for grant updates and those types of things. In 2022, we completed the design and construction documents from the December meetings and uploaded those to the state for the review. In February of this year, we had bidding documents sent over from the consultant to the city so we could review those and get those published for RFP. In March of this year, we published the RFP. In April, we opened the bids. And then in May through June, we did negotiate with the contractor for some of those bid items that were a little bit higher than what we had anticipated. And then in July, this leads us to today. So with that timeline, I just want to go over a quick overview with you of the design. This was phase 1 that was originally presented to the city back in 2020, but it does incorporate the extension of the pond going from 2 smaller ponds to 1 large pond. I wanted to make sure that we had the gazebo and the overlook that went out into the water. And then, of course, the pier, or the floating dock, if you will. And we did have some aeration diffusers down at the bottom of the lake, and as well as fountains to make sure that we had, fish habitat was adequate. And then, of course, we did have the trail system that went around to where the old fountain was at, if you will, where the concrete steps were. So all of that was included in phase 1. Part of phase 2, this is a little upside down, but hopefully it shows it well. But phase 2 is all the highlighted green area. So again, kind of picking up on that bottom left-hand corner of the design, and really extending that trail network, extending the trail network all the way to the golf course cart path, which would be utilized as a sidewalk. And then the bottom right-hand corner is the extension of the trail system to make it a fully looped system. One of the things you may note is that darker gray area. That is a boardwalk that would extend over the northeast portion of the pond itself. So again, really trying to make this an entirely loop system, phasing in, through 1 and phase 2. So through negotiations with the contractor, we did have a little bit of modifications to it as far as the city scope of work. We wanted to take on some of the work associated with this project just to save costs for the city. So the city does plan on excavating the holding pond, on a secondary holding pond on the golf course. That secondary holding pond is really to make sure that we have adequate water for the golf course whenever this project is moving forward, because currently the irrigation is basically coming out of a well and going into the duck pond. And so we want to make sure that we have adequate water for the golf course as the duck pond project continues to move forward. The contractor will then come in and install a 24-inch RCP to connect the well pond with the secondary holding pond on the golf course that the city is going to excavate. During phase 1, the contractor will demolition the sidewalks and the islands and any other material that is currently on site. Again, the 1 large pond will now be, or the 2 small ponds will now be 1 large pond. The contractor will also grade the bottom of the pond, if you will, and dredge out material. And the grading of that is to, again, establish fish habitat to make sure that we have, a great fishing habitat for people that want to come around and fish at the duck pond at some point. And then the new trail system that I mentioned that will be connecting basically from the gazebo all the way to where the older fountain was at. The contractor will take care of that. They'll make sure that we have a retaining wall that is in there. I know erosion was a big concern. That's the whole reason why we started this project. But the banks basically will be reinforced with concrete and have a retaining wall, if you will. In phase 2, the remainder of the trail system will be poured, which was that highlighted area that I presented to you earlier. Again, this is just to connect, make a fully looped trail system throughout the project. The boardwalk will be installed in the northeast corner of the pond. We'll have electricity that's going to be installed, and then all the amenities, if you will. So the boardwalk, the gazebo, and the pier. We will have hydro seeding that will be installed as well by the contractor, and then completion of the project would be in October of '23. A couple things to note that I did not have on this presentation is that if we do move forward with this tonight, we are looking at giving a notice to proceed to the contractor in September of this year, and October of '23 would be the end date to his contract. Another thing to note that we did pull out of the contract with Lester Construction or Contracting is the aluminum dock or the pier and the gazebo. Basically, we pulled those out so that we can go through a buy board option. That ended up saving us $115,000 basically from removing that contract price out from the contractor doing it to us going forward with a buy board price. Our consultant had reviewed some numbers, had gotten all that information as it was in his contract to do so, and buy board was the cheapest way for us to go, but also made sure that it fit all of the parameters that we needed to on the construction side of things. So again, we wanted to make sure that we had a significant cost savings there, and just going through buy board. We would have to work with the buy board contractor to make sure that logistically everything falls into place with the contractor and with the buy board delivery and installation. So I wanted to make that note, and as far as the rest of it that was pulled out from the contract to give us some savings, we had temporary fencing. The bid price on that was $18,972. We already have fencing out there. We have T-posts and construction fencing. We touched base with the state, touched base with legal. Everything was good on that front, so it's really going to save us $18,000 for using the equipment that we have out there currently. Another thing was a temporary irrigation. Bid price came in at $10,000. We did a little bit of homework, carried the one, and made sure that we came in under that. And we're looking at about a cost savings of $5,000 there. So we really wanted to get our numbers down to where we had a $1,614,000 contract to complete the Duck Pond project. So that's really all I have. I'm not sure if y'all have any questions. Yes, ma'am.
I do, and I apologize to you for not asking you this in advance, and I hope I don't put you on the spot, but we got into this project to begin with because we were just going to clean the duck pond, and we discovered there'd been eating away at the concrete. So do we know what caused that? Have we made arrangements to either have this design be completely different or rectify whatever caused that so that we don't end up in the same spot? And I'm sure the answer is yes, but I apologize for that.
Oh, no worries at all. It's a great question. Yes, ma'am. So that was part of the reason why we moved from the 2 ponds to the 1 pond. There was a lot of just undermining that took place from either the tree roots that were there and then just the age, if you will, of the sidewalk. So we got away with that. We have the trail system now on the banks of the pond, or the exterior of the water, if you will. That is part of the reason why we also have that retaining wall, that concrete retaining wall, to make sure that we don't have any issues or further erosion when it comes to, later down the line. So I hope that answered your question.
That does, and I think that's important for the community to understand also. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Oh, and also just to note, the gazebo and the pier will be on beams, so that way there's not any issues with that either.
I move we adopt E6.
I second.
Any other discussion? Mr. Alvaro, I actually had a question.
Yes, sir.
In regards to on Phase 2, and you connect it to the cart path from there, I am not a good golfer. I don't claim to be, but is that number 9 coming in on that side?
Yes, sir.
Will there be any issue with walkers on a trail when you have golfers coming up and projectiles, called Titleist,
Yes,
or
sir.
whatever your choice is, to hit? I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't going to be any kind of issue between walkers, golfers, as we build up our golfing numbers from that standpoint.
Absolutely, that's a great question. Part of what we have in the budget for this upcoming fiscal year is to move the tee boxes, and so shifting the tee boxes over from where they currently are to a little further inside of the golf course. We're hoping that can help with that. I'm also not the best golfer, so I completely understand where you're coming from. But what we want to do in the future is continue to put landscaping that will have trees that'll be basically between the sidewalk area that is proposed and the fairway, if you will. Hopefully we can mitigate as many was it hooks or slices? Whichever one that is. I need Rolando here. What is it?
It would definitely be a slice.
I'm left-handed. I disagree.
Fair enough.
All right, thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, well, we already have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion E6 passes. We'll close action items and move on to city manager reports. Mr. Farrell.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. So first of all, we're going to have Ken Gill give us a presentation on the drought contingency plan.
Good evening. And
Good evening, Mr. Gill.
just as you thought we were out of the drought on Friday, just to give you a little idea of how quick that rain was and how quick it went away, the river went from 4 feet up to about 8 feet elevation in half an hour, and in one day, back to 4 feet. So what
Well,
we're
you
looking
are
at.
raining on our parade.
Yeah, what we need, and part of this drought, what I want to just kind of start with is, our issue is we need the rain upstream. We need Cuero, Gonzales, Seguin, New Braunfels, San Marcos, all of those people to get rain. So we're praying for them too. Tonight, talk about drought contingency planning and implementation. Topics is touch a little bit on the water rights, our drought plan, the stages, what they mean, what's different, and then stage 3 planning. Water rights. We've got seniority rights. The water rights are based on seniority, and we've gathered those since the 80s. We're still looking into getting more. Our largest permit allows 20,000 acre feet, which is just a ton of water. Good news, it's a good source when the river is above normal flows, and it's calculated to maintain the downstream rights, bays, and estuaries. Diversion is restricted to 10% when the river falls between normal and low flow period. And then we can't draw any water out of that permit when it's below the low flow. And all of those flows are based on CFS limitations that were established when these permits were acquired. And right now, we are in the low flow, below that. Secondary water rights permits, we have 2 of those. And those are limited quantities, limited diversion rates, and we draw on those at the absolute last minute. So when we have those rights, so that period, we're going to go ahead and whatever water we took out of the river, we're going to use towards that 20,000 acre feet. So we're doing everything we can to save those water rights. The other permits we have is the water exchange, and that is what we would do in phase 3. And that's, again, we use the wells that we have in Victoria that go into the West Outfall, in addition to 3 other water rights that we have. Those got to be used conjunctionally together. Next, I'll go into what the stages are, what they mean. Stage 1 is a mild shortage. We try to get 2% reduction in water, and that's when the river falls below normal flows, and it still allows for that 10% diversion out of that large permit. Stage 2, which is what we're in now, that's why it's highlighted, is 5% reduction, and that's when the river falls below low flows. And no water, when the river falls below low flows. And no water diversion from that large permit, and it utilizes our other secondary permits. Stage 3, that's we try to get 10% water reduction, and that's when we base that off the off-channel reservoir levels when they fall below 42 feet or approximately 50% drawdown. And that's when we implement the groundwater exchange program. And again, we pump the wells, goes into the storm sewer system, down the west outfall. We monitor how much we pump from the wells based on the flow meters. We exchange that through TCEQ. It's cumbersome, but it's a great plan. Stage 4 is critical water storage shortage. That's 15% reduction. And that's again based on the off-channel reservoirs when they fall below 37 feet or 75% drawdown. And continue with the groundwater exchange program. And then stage 5, let's hope that never happens, is the emergency water shortage, 50%, and pumping capacity exceeds by customer demands. And again, right now, just to let everybody know, we're in stage 2.
Can you go back? I have a question. We're in stage 2.
Correct.
Have we had a 5% reduction in water use?
Not at this time yet. It's still high. We typically run summer months 16 million gallons. We're running 17, 18. We haven't seen it yet, but it could be higher. I know that for sure. Any little bit helps, and we're getting some good participation from the community.
How close are we going to stage 3?
If this continues and we continue pumping like this, 20 to 30 days. In other words, we need that upstream rain. The drought restrictions for customers, I'll go over this briefly because we also worked on a PSA on last Thursday, and that's going to go out to the media and through the newspaper and the public Facebook. But stage 1 is mild shortage, voluntary limit irrigation between 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. and 8 to 12. Stage 2 is moderate, required limit, again, same time limit for irrigation, handheld positive shutoff for, if you're washing your car or watering your grass, time limits for car washing, filling of pools, and then time restrictions include golf courses unless they're by water well. I want everybody to know that Riverside, Country Club, and Colony Creek, they all have water wells, so don't be alarmed when you see them pumping water in their grass because they're different from what we get our water from. Severe water shortage, continue limited water times, limit to designated watering days. That will be the big change. And then no water usage for washing buildings, sidewalks, and then restaurants serve water only when requested by patrons. Stage 4, again, designated watering days with handheld positive shutoff. Sprinklers are out. That goes back to just hand watering. And then drip irrigation still good. And then prohibit car washing except from a commercial facility. And then stage 5 is water rationing if conditions threaten public health, safety, and welfare. And that's truly a declaration by the city manager. Why is this year different? History, we've been in stage 2 many times before. Usually that occurs late summer, like September, October. Last year it was even as late as November. It has not occurred in June. We've been in stage 3 2 times before, in 2013 and 14. And again, that occurred in August, September, October. Again, we've never had to go to stage 3, and this I prepared back, but we never had to go to stage 3 in June or even in July. So we're into the July month. And then weather predictions, not forecasting substantial rains in the Guadalupe Basin. And planning, what we're doing, we're checking all the water wells, we're testing them, making sure they're operational, making repairs, whatever we need. Public outreach, continue with more public information programming. We're preparing handouts, door tags for violators or, restrictions. We just want to make it as voluntary to the public, but not hit them with a fine or anything, but just get handouts so that everybody knows it's out there. And then this is a good one for Gilbert, use our water meter analytics to review consumption reports to locate those high users. In other words, we can use that much like we can during a freeze to find out, hey, who's using a lot of water that really shouldn't be. So we can use a combination of all these things to really monitor the conditions we're under. And that's it. If you got any questions, and again, this is just to get it out to the public to say, just watch your water, conserve, and this unfortunately is not Victoria. This is the whole state of Texas, and it's a pretty rough one. I think there's a lot of communities, concerned about it and looking at restrictions and just getting the public aware.
Mr. Gill, where does our ASR fit into this in the future?
In the future, the ASR in conjunction, and this is, I touch base on it, but ASR is a long-term project because each ASR well is a limited, when I mean limited, it's a limited amount. So to really have a true ASR, you need a field. In other words, 10 wells. And the tricky part about ASR is you got to have that river water to be able to put into the ground. So if it's a prolonged drought, such as like California or other states have run into, their ASR wells were good for maybe a year, maybe two, and now they're struggling with those. So, but it's a long term for Victoria, and that ties in with the off-channel reservoir, a project that we're looking at that's been here about tying those together, but they're all combined.
Saw as the San Antonio water system was trying to get a water permit way down past where the two rivers come together. And if that happens, supposedly our rights would not be as senior as they are now. Is that incorrect, or did they get it?
They're coming out of the San Antonio River. It really doesn't affect us.
Well, it's further down, and it was supposedly going to be senior water rights. It was going to be past where the San Antonio River and the Guadalupe come together, because that's the whole basin.
Right, but...
And they were going to, supposedly, if they got it, that was a senior water right, and so people would have to let stuff go down the river. I'd like to know where we are with that, if that's true, or...
San Antonio is unique in that they pump groundwater, and that's bed and banks, bed to banks. And the state's made a kind of a ruling, and it's still under protest, that what they pump out of the ground is their water, okay? And there's our water rights to the Guadalupe, and what they've looked at is we're not really affected because we're so far upstream. And we're still talking about it, but that's the initial discussions I've read on that rule is we're way upstream of where they're wanting their diversion point, which is at the confluence of Guadalupe and San Antonio rivers.
You're right, but my understanding was if they got the water rights, which you're right, it's groundwater, they're putting water from their sewage treatment plant in, and it's groundwater, so it's their water. And when it gets down the river, they're saying, well, it's our water, we can pull it out. My understanding was that would make it a very senior water right, and it meant not only does the water have to come down to San Antonio, it has to come down to Guadalupe, so that because they would have priority. And I just want to make sure that that's not. I'd like to know where that is with that permit.
That's still under discussion, and I don't want to get. That one's a political one, and it's a football. There's a lot of protesters with that.
There is.
Besides us, I know GBRA is discussing it with them, so it's still up in TCEQ's arms.
Mr. Lockwood, that's currently part of a contested hearing at TCEQ. There were a number of entities that weighed in as interested parties. TCEQ made determinations that only a few were actually truly impacted parties, and they are part of that contested hearing process with TCEQ that, from my understanding from those that deal in that area, that could be a 1 to 2 year process easily.
Those hearings are supposed to start in spring of 2023.
Well, I'd like to be kept abreast of what happens
Okay.
with this.
I don't completely know what I'm talking about here, but, you know, San Antonio's putting the water in bed and banks argument that they're making. Now, we're doing a water exchange where we're pulling water out of our wells and putting it into the river. We're getting credit for that and being able to pull other river water out. But is there a parallel argument that could be made or could be used?
I'm not legal, but I'm going to say, yes, there is. That's part of how we got that water exchange, because we pumped it out, put it in the river.
Oh,
The
okay.
difference is where we started this a long time ago is we said, we're just swapping water. And they were like, no. And they finally agreed to it because they said, yeah, that's your water from the wells. And they did a water exchange. That's the difference. I don't think San Antonio wants to do a water exchange. They just want the rights from that water transferred down there. Did that get it?
I think so.
Okay.
Any
All
other
right.
questions for Mr. Gill?
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
And now we'll
Ms.
open up the-
Rania.
Yeah.
Good evening. Mayor Pro Tem, Council, it's been a while since I've been up here.
Welcome
Just-
back.
Thank you. Jesus is probably on the palm, drinking a little margarita, watching this right now. That's okay. How you doing, Jose?
Everybody wave hi.
Hey, Jesus. Anyway, good evening. I have 4 slides that are relevant here, so everybody's pushing me here to finish it up in 5 minutes. Well, that's not up to me, but I'm going to try my best. Tonight, it's just a status update, a CIP budget update. As you're aware, there's been some effect in the economy that has a direct, indirect impact on some of the projects. So we want to talk about that briefly. And also, I want to bring up and refresh and give a backup update on the CIP project fee that Mr. Garza did about a month ago and the status of that as well with the new costs involved. With that said, I want to have Ken come up here and talk about each project and its increase. Thank you.
I'm not going to do every project because that'll take a while. Let me hit really the big one. The biggest change you'll see is that residential. And we have received the analysis from the soils company to recommend, which process is best. And they came back with basically the Queen City is still preferred to do a double seal coat. Castle Hill West, double seal coat. Deer Chase, we had in the budget, in the plan to do a thin mill and overlay, and that's still in place. Murray, Cameron, and Church, we did have a thin mill and overlay. They recommend a double seal coat. It's just a better product for that. One of the reasons that went up so much is it's the volume. We're doing 180,000 square yards. And when you start looking at the square yard price of a seal coat, that really jumps it up quick. And we're just taking those costs for all these projects based on what we've seen from North Heights bids, what we've talked to, either the contractors or state company, the TxDOT, finding out what their bids are seeing. These are I'm going to call them best guess estimates of increases. And, as the economy fluctuates, we'll see. But I believe we're in tolerance with these variances. Some of the updates on where we are with these projects. I know Dairy Road is in design. It's 60% complete. We just received the plans. The Laurent water line, that's under design, and so are all the residential neighborhoods. Those didn't change. We had enough our estimates were secure enough, and we're doing cost analysis to really pin those projects and lower the costs on those. And Crestwood, again, a lot of that has to do with the concrete and steel costs. And I'll answer any questions on this slide. It's yours.
So basically, I'll go away, but anyway, he did go away. The ones that stick out like a sore thumb, of course, is the residential street maintenance. I would have to also include the Long Tree Acre Street Improvement Drainage Project, and of course, the Crestwood Phase 3. That's the biggest bulk right there. The other ones are reasonable, and from a budgetary standpoint, can be affordable. Now, keep in mind, if you go back and look at your CIP project and try to tie that 41.1, it's not going to tie. Because in there, you got the Crestwood Phase 3, which is an old CIP that's currently being let out. Just want to FYI on that one, okay? So let's move on to the next page real quick. I'm not planning to go through it, but I just want to give you some heads up on this, is that, you know, with the best guess that Mr. Ken has came up with, basically what he's trying to do is attempt to predict the future. So, as you well know, I try to predict the future with a budget, and that's 12 months. He's doing it within 4 or 5 months. Kudos for him. But anyway, with that said, we, staff, has put together, I think, a pretty reasonable budget to address this issue of $5.3 million at this time. Now, it's possible. What happens if these project comes in under? Well, the good part about it, it's flexible. In other words, if we don't see that the prices are coming in as we think they are, we can put the money aside, use it for a later future CIP, and just put a reserve. Now, in here, as you saw, which I will also address, is that one of them has to deal with the bonds. If we sell any additional bonds this year, keep in mind that next year we have some other street projects that we need to sell. If we don't use those money, we carry that money over and we sell less bonds. Does that make sense? So, you know, I don't want to have our hands tied up on that situation. So let's go into the money real quick. Again, I try to find ways where I can present this very simple, but I'm an accountant. I am so sorry. It is what it is. I don't have a duck that I can put up there and 3 little points. But anyway, but kudos to Jason.
We like green dollar signs. That would be all right.
I appreciate it. I'm just going to address the bottom line total, which the total funding. For example, the general fund comes up with proposing to add another $550,000 to the budget, the CIP. Basically, where I'm going to get that money is I went back and re-scrubbed some of the numbers in 22, increased my interest rates, investment receipts. I'm okay with that. Plus, as you well know, if you kept track of your sales tax receipt, this last one came in around $200,000 above. So we're good secure with the general fund side. But keep in mind, I was going to use some of this money to move money to the stabilization fund. So there's a tick for tack here. So keep that in mind. On the utility side, pretty straightforward. As you recall, this money is coming from our debt capacity cash flow. We have not used all of it, basically because we're waiting on some. The big project is I call it the OGBR, but it's the old water waste treatment plant. We're having a study down to upgrade it. And I was trying to hold back that money for the coming year to see what kind of projects we're going to have and use that money. So we have it here. We can use it here. Hopefully, we come up with different means how we're going to fund the other one. So it's, again, tick for tack. You use money now, it's going to do something in the future. Victoria Sales Tax Development Corporation, let me dissect that in 2 pieces. Let's talk out the 1.21. That's the Crestwood Phase 3. Now, currently right now, we have some projects outstanding that are being completed. And I have a pretty good feeling that those can come in under. And I don't see that one being an issue at all. So that under amount will take care of this expected cost increase. With that said, you're looking at $1 million, particularly from the new budget coming in from the sales tax side. And then last time I checked, it's pretty reasonable. It's still looking at a healthy fund balance with 23, we're still around $7 million, 7.6, something like that. So it's not causing any harm on the financial side of theirs either. Any questions so far? Okay, I'm moving into the bond side now. That's an additional $590,000 to address the street residential side of it. That we're proposing that to increase the sale that we're planning to do this coming year. That's that $590,000. And again, for some reason, if it doesn't come in as we expect and it comes in under, that money will be set aside to be used on the street project that currently we're doing right now. Utilities, we do College Park, Bon Air, Tanglewood. I thought she'd be looking at me when she's looking at that. So anyway. And of course, the grant is basically the ASR grant. Well, since the cost's going up, we're going to increase the application by $430,000 as well. Any questions so far? That is right now, currently we addressed the 5.3. Yes, sir.
You do the CO bond, will the bond rate go up for the tax?
You're asking me to make sure I have the question correct. Basically, what's the effect of
The
the
ISO
500?
rate go up?
Absolutely, you'll have to increase it. And I have a slide later if I can show you what the tax rate effective is.
We have a stabilization fund of $1 million, right?
Yes, sir.
We could use that instead. could
As
we not?
counsel, I didn't touch that. Last time I did something like that with ARPA money, I got slapped.
No,
Okay,
but that's
I
up
ain't
to
touching it.
council if council wants to.
That's
use
your
it.
prerogative. You
that's the
decide,
reason-
Gil.
That was
Forget-
one of the reasons we made this fund.
It's your call, sir. It's council's.
Okay.
And if y'all want to say, Gil, you got the green light for that, hey,
And I don't recall at the I understand that the Sales Tax Corporation has this balance, and yes, we could use it, but it was not presented this way at the last.
well, this has never been presented as sales tax, okay? And I don't want to present it as sales tax right now without having council as a first view on it. And as you recall, the mayor's out too as well. So I need to present that to y'all, make sure you're comfortable. I don't expect an answer tonight because you probably have some discussion later when Mr. Garza gets back and some further discussion. Remember, the only thing we're going to do here is that we're going to put this in the budget. We still got several meetings to go to. And things might change. One, for example, it's take it out at the stabilization fund. That's going to be a change. It's going to affect some things. So this is a moving target right now from perspective as the dollar side is the word. But this has not been presented as sales tax, and I plan to present this sales tax to when we go back in August when I have a full-blown budget for '23.
Okay, I have one other question. When you presented the budget to us, the very preliminary budget to us.
That was Mr. Garza.
What Mr. Garza did, with your blessing, I'm sure, or maybe not.
Absolutely.
Was it based on our sales tax has come back over budget? And you said, you alluded to the fact that that 0.55 could be taken care of with excess money. Was the budget based on, what was it based on, the budgeted sales tax money that we did for the previous year, or what you expected it to come back?
Expect it now. As you recall, I think you and I had this conversation. I'm going to use an excess right now. Back when the budget was presented, it was 18 point something, I believe. That excess wasn't going to fund the CIP, okay? As a one-time money tub. Now, since that date, we got one more receipt in this past week.
It was high.
That was the $200,000 slightly above, plus my interest, boom, taken care of.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other comments? Now, I'm going to move on real quick. I don't want to take too much time on this, but I just want to bring council up to date because since we're talking about the CIP, it's prudent to go ahead and just talk about how this plays in with the presentation Mr. Garza did about a month ago concerning the new CIP fee service program, whereby moving forward, we want to add a fee service to all the projects, including any bonds that are going to fund these projects. Okay? So on the left-hand side, is this? Oh, there it is. Right here is the 23. The one you saw about a month ago, as you recall, that was an average over a 5-year period. This is the 23 here. These numbers right here, this column, includes that $5.3 million increase as well in the various categories, okay? In addition to that, as you recall, we have the bonds set down here at $16 million. That also includes the increase of $509,000. This would change if council decides to go back and let's use stabilization fund instead, okay? Just want to qualify that. With the given numbers the way it is now, one point also before I say anything, as you recall, the tax sale and grants will not get charged a 1.8% fee because when we get those grants, it's here's your money, you got to make a match to it, so it doesn't make any sense. So what happens, the city or the general fund or utility will pick up that 1.8. And that's what those arrows mean, that we'll allocate those numbers to the new column, which is the CIP cost allocation. You still got your $22.9 million subtotal and bottom without the bonds, but now those funds have been allocated to the general fund and utilities to figure out the cost allocation for CPI fee. In this case, the bond side will come up with about $290,000 service fee, which equates to that 1.8% when you apply it to the total projects. One of the recommendation, or the recommendation is to add the $290,000 to the bond issue to implement this program where each one will pay for its service fee. Keep in mind that in the 23 budget, we have, what's the word I'm trying to look for? Expand the CIP division. As you recall, we added one city engineer. We added one engineer design. At the same time, we took out the CIP manager. That was in addition to the previous total number was around 800. Now you got a $1.4 million CIP division cost. Yes, the personnel, equipment, and some office supplies. Okay? So the concept here is that, well, the general fund will pay that portion, the utility will pay their portion. And in this case, the bond side would pay their portion for those direct bonds, project that would be dealt with CIP. Does that make sense to y'all so far? And of course, sales tax will put their funding at 300. And again, I'm gonna repeat, I think Mr. Garza addressed this back then, but it's right now it shows 4%, but as you recall, their contract gives the city a 5%. And it just happened from the mathematical, it comes out to 4 this time. But keep in mind on the sales tax, that 5%, $300,000 is supposed to cover A to Z, legal, finance, all the service support, engineering, everything. So it's not true number of a CIP charge. Hopefully down the road, we want to get back to the discussion and come up with a number that reflect like everybody else pays that same level and put the other services separate, kind of break it out. Any question on this slide? I just put this up here again just to repeat what Mr. Garza did. We're going to have plenty of time. The budget will be presented in August the 2nd. There'll be multiple meetings on the budget work sessions. At that time, we can address the CIP, the cost that we talked about, the proposed funding for it, and we can address again the CIP service fee program as well. But the budget you're going to see on August 2nd will include those items. Any comment? Any questions? Jesus, enjoy my tequila. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garza. We don't have any work sessions this evening, correct, Mr. Farrell?
We do have one executive session item.
No, well, I know we have executive.
Yeah,
work,
sorry.
but
Yeah, no work
yes,
sessions.
correct. All right, at this time, this will conclude the public portion of the meeting. I anticipate we'll take a 5-minute break and we'll resume for executive session. This time, meeting is adjourned. Do we have time?
At this time, the City Council will recess for executive session on the 19th day of July 2022 at 6:39 p.m. The subject matter of the executive session deliberation is as follows: Texas Government Code 551.087, 551.072, and 551.071.